Check 1 2. I am recording now. I have no idea where this is recording to, but we'll figure that out later. But let's go ahead and start the stream.
Qui se perd sur sa bouche, voilà le portrait sans retouche de l'homme auquel j'appartiens.
It's a false start. Let's try that again.
Des yeux qui font baisser les miens, un rire qui se perd sur sa bouche, voilà le portrait sans retouche de l'homme auquel j'appartiens. Quand il me prend dans ses bras, qu'il me parle tout bas, je vois la vie en rose. Il me dit des mots d'amour, des mots de tous les jours, que ça me fait quelque chose. Il est entré dans mon cœur une part de bonheur dont je connais la cause. C'est lui pour moi, moi pour lui dans la vie. Il me l'a dit, l'a juré pour la vie. Et dès que je l'aperçois, alors je sens dans moi mon cœur qui bat. Des nuits d'amour à plus finir, un grand bonheur qui prend sa place, des ennuis, des chagrins s'effacent, heureux, heureux, en mourir. Quand il me prend dans ses bras, il me parle tout bas, je vois la vie en rose. Il me dit des mots d'amour, des mots de tous les jours, et ça me fait quelque chose. Il est entré dans mon cœur une part de bonheur dont je connais la cause.
Hey, everyone. Check 1 2. Check 1 2. Got some music in the background. All right. Turn Edith Piaf down a bit. She's on repeat for some reason. We'll just turn her off for now. So hopefully this is recording. And if it's not recording, and well, I guess if it's not recording, you're not watching this on YouTube, so whatever. But welcome. My name is Miguel Coronado. I am an illustrator and concept artist. I currently work with Turn Me Up Games as an art director, and I'm just going to record a quick intro to digital painting with Photoshop to have like as a new video online. I've done a class before back in Austin, and it was a big kind of miss, really. Lots of people weren't really prepared for the class, but we're going to go ahead and do another little tutorial session. This will be much more up to date. We're going to use the Photoshop Creative Cloud. You can find my work on Instagram. My username is Mike086. You can find my work on my line on my website, www.mciii.net. And I stream here on Twitch. I'll be having a more regular schedule pretty soon in the coming week, probably. But let's get started. And if you're watching on YouTube, I may mention like some usernames. That's just because this is being streamed on Twitch currently. So, we'll figure that out as we go. I guess I'm going to just share my screen for now. So you're going to see like the OBS and some of the background of my computer just to start. But we'll move on from that pretty quickly, and I'm just switching out my desktops right now. Just making sure I have no work stuff in my desktop. All right, so this is how it works. Let's do a screen display capture. OBS is getting all married. And my chat's open here. So you'll see that. Okay, here's Adobe Creative Cloud, right? So when you open it up, it's going to look something like this. It's going to have your recent files, or you can have, you got these little tabs you can click through for libraries, presets. And there's a way to turn this off in the settings, but I kind of like it, so I leave it up. And a lot of this tutorial is going to be about just the functionality of Photoshop, less about actually drawing. And if you don't know how to draw yet, Photoshop's not going to help you learn. But it's a lot more affordable at this point to buy a month of Photoshop through Adobe for $10 than buy an entire set of oil paints or watercolors that are really expensive. They're like one really good brush, a traditional brush, can cost you about $15, which is the cost of Photoshop currently. They're like $10 a month. So let's get started. You're going to click New. You're going to get this little pop-up here, and it's going to have some settings here. So Artboard is my document type. It has a drop-down menu. You can kind of customize anything you want here. Right now it says Artboard size iPhone 6 Plus. That's because I work at a game company, and the last document I made was iPhone 6 size, right? So let's go to US paper, and we're just going to go to letter. So it's 8.5 by 11. This is your standard piece of paper, your standard computer printer paper. We're just going to go to OK, and you're going to open your document. Now, mine looks really different. I'm going to switch this to, I think it's Essentials. Not Essentials. It's might be Photography. I got to reset Essentials. There. So you should see this. There's going to be a toolbar over here to the side, and you can have this little font book here with some colors, library adjustment styles, layers, channels, paths, colors, and swatches. And if I'm going a little too fast for you, ideally this is going to be recorded and thrown onto YouTube, so you'll be able to stop and rewind. Okay. So let's say you've got your Wacom plugged in. Really quickly, mine is set up here. If I go to System Preferences, you're going to find a Wacom tablet. You can double click that, and you're going to have your Preferences box here. I can't open this up right now. But basically, in this little preference, in this Wacom tablet preferences, and if you're running on Windows, I don't know where to go, so sorry. But if you're on Mac, it's in System Preferences, and then it's the little tablet picture down here. So I've got the 5, which has an in-house battery if I want to go wireless, but I don't use wireless that much because the battery does shake loose pretty easily, so it cuts your connection. But your tools, you're going to have your grip pen, your mouse, your functional buttons, and you have touch sensitivity. Now this is if you have the Wacom Intuos 5. If you have a different version of the Wacom tablet, you won't have all these options. So I've got 1, 2, 3, I got 8 buttons plus a touch wheel that's customizable, touch ring, my wireless, my on-screen controls, which is a quick menu that pops up. For the sake of speediness, I'll just explain what my setup is. Everyone's setup is different. There's no right or wrong way to do this. My top button is Shift. My second button is Option. Third button is Control. And this fourth button is Backstep. It's not undo, it's backstep. So if I go to keystroke, and I can click on this keystroke here, you're going to see that it's this, what is it? I think it's Option Command Z, or it's Shift Command Z. No, it's Option, sorry, it's right here. Option Command Z is step back. It's a basically it's going to run through every action I've done, right? If it was just Command Z, it's only going to undo my last action. And what happens is you'll undo one action, and then when you click undo again, it's going to redo the action because technically the last action you did was the undo, right? It's going to put you in a little spiral. But if you have it on step back, you're actually going to step back in the history of your program. So this is how I like to have it. Step back right here. If you notice when you go to keystroke, you can put in a command key here, but you actually have the modifier as part of your option of the drop-down menu. Click that, and you can just tap like Control, Option, Command, Shift, or you click. You could have your pad be a left click, middle click, or right click. The bottom four buttons flip, so it's keystroke. It's Command F. Command F is going to flip your document. It's your entire document, not just a layer. That's going to be helpful when you start drawing, and I'll explain more about that later. Keystroke for the second button is black and white. So if you go to keystroke, you put X. X is going to switch between your foreground color and your background color. By default, that's black and white. So it's basically going to flip between black and white. The third keystroke, it's going to be smudge, and I have that set to I think it's O. So O is smudge. So if I want to access my smudge key, it's right here. And then the last keystroke is the space bar. And the space bar is a grabby hand, which is a little hand that moves your document around. The touch stuff, I don't really have too much of this customized. I'm not really too concerned. If you find yourself, if you like using the touch capabilities, you can activate that, but I just disable it because it often starts to count clicks that I don't want it to count. The grip pin, I think mine is set slightly more to firm for tip feel, and the double click distance, it's right at I think it's at the normal setting, the default. And then my tilt sensitivity is on normal, but I could turn that up to high if I wanted to. Now these two buttons on your pin, those have been customized, right? So the closest button to the tip is my brush key. So whenever I tap that button, it switches to my brush tool automatically. And then the other keystroke is the eyedropper, which is I. Now I use I as my eyedropper keystroke because it allows me to. I'm just used to it, honestly. You can click Command. I believe Command's the other eyedropper tool. If I'm wrong, forgive me. But it's the I tool is also the I key activates the eyedropper tool and keeps it activated. And I think it's the Command key or the Option key. It temporarily activates the eyedropper tool as long as you're holding the key down. So for the sake of what I've learned how to use, I use the I tool. I use the I key for the eyedropper tool. Anyway, and I put them here on my pen. So I'm quickly picking a color and painting with a color, picking a color, painting with a color. And then the tip is always click. You don't really want to change that. Eraser is erase. It's automatic. For Photoshop and most painting programs, it works with the Wacom tablet to sense the eraser function. And my mapping, you can adjust this if you want, but typically it's pretty set. It's set pretty nicely. But if you're having some issues with like the size of your monitor and the area you're working with, you can mess around with some of this stuff. I don't do that, so I'm not going to go into it. So let's close that. So you got an idea of my settings, right? So we've opened up a document in Photoshop. This is the default Photoshop menu. The reason I have the settings the way I do, basically if you haven't used this program before, you can click that button on the Wacom pin, which let me just draw it out for you. The Wacom pin's right here, right? And it's got this button. There's the tip. And then there's like the pointer, right? So this button, that's the B button for my brush. So whenever I want to activate the brush, I click that. So let me go ahead and erase everything that you see here, and I'll explain how to do this later. But I just want you to understand that if you're using my settings, you can open up a new document, click that button, and you can start drawing immediately, right? That's all you need to do. Your brushes are going to look a lot different than my brushes. Let's see here. I'll jump onto the default real quick. So let me just load up the default. Brush presets. Maybe it's this. Trying to get this to reset. Let me just close that. That's not the correct one. Maybe it's here. Load. Okay. So I'm just loading this right now. I'm just trying to load the default settings. Reset brushes. I'm just gonna say okay. Okay. Oops, I'm not gonna save it. There. Okay. So these are the brushes you'll see. You got this like soft brush, a hard brush, soft brush that's tapered, and a hard brush that's tapered. And then you kind of goes down, right? And you got these real media brushes, and the real media brushes work with the pin tilt. I don't use many of these. The only ones I really use are these like soft ones up here, like this one. It's just like a regular line. But if you were to increase the brush size, which you can increase the brush size on Photoshop by pressing the brackets. Left bracket, size goes down. Right bracket, size goes up. But I have it matched to the Wacom tablet, so my wheel on my tablet moves this pin size up and down. So you can see that that's how it's working here. And you'll notice that as I paint, it's kind of like spray paint. It's either 100% black or it's 100% not there. There's not really there's no kind of fading going on, no transitional tones. So this is fine if you want to kind of pretend you're painting or drawing with a pen. But if you want to get your normal kind of like pencil feel, you're going to want to adjust these brush settings. So I'm switching between the colors really fast by pressing X. You can either press X on your keyboard, or like I said, I have mine hotkeyed to my Wacom tablet. I'm going to show you how to adjust the brush settings real quick. So let's see here. You're going to go to Window, Brush, and you're going to see the brush you currently have selected is going to be right here on the bottom thumbnail. So if I pull this window here, you see there's several options. It says brush tip shape, shape dynamics. That's checked. So if I uncheck that, you're going to notice that the shape no longer tapers. So if I activate that, it creates the tapering effect. And if I click on this name, it'll open up the settings. So if it says size jitter. So the size jitter is like the random jitter of the brush, which means like the random size increase and decrease of the brush. And right now the control of the size is set to pin pressure. So you can set it to fade if you want. So you want it to like, there goes my dryer, which will be on YouTube recorded video. But if you set it to fade, you'll notice that the size immediately fades away. It immediately tapers as the stroke is being made. So like this would be great if you're trying to do like hair or something, right? Or feathers. But I don't really use this setting at all. Normally keep it set to pin pressure. So if I press very lightly, the brush size is very small. If I press really hard, the brush size gets really big, right? And the maximum size of your brush is dependent upon the size you have it set in with the bracket tool, or if you go up here to this top bar, there's this drop down box. It's this little circle here with this 150. That's telling you that your brush is currently 150 pixels wide. So if I drop that down, you'll see that I can adjust the size right here manually to 5,000 pixels, which 5,000 pixels is massive, right? We'll keep it at 150. And then the hardness. So I can adjust how fuzzy or sharp this brush appears. So if I up the hardness 100%, it's like I'm painting with like straight pixels, right? There's no gradation. Let's turn the hardness all the way back down to 0, just because this brush is kind of set that way already. And also you can, this little diagram here, it's like a circle with a dot, dot, and an arrow. You can mess with this, and this basically changes the angle of the brush. So if you imagine this brush as being a marker, it's basically like tilting your marker. You could tilt it and rotate it. So if I tilt it and rotate it, let me go ahead and clear this canvas real quick. So that's tilted and rotated. It's going to look very much more like a calligraphy pen. You see how that has changed the shape. And you can tilt it to varying degrees. I mean, like you could really slant it to where it's completely vertical, and keep it super horizontal if you want. But we'll go ahead and keep it back at the default, just for the remainder of this little intro. So if I can press D, it's going to make my colors switch to black and white. If I press X, it switches it to white. So like I press D, black is selected. X, it flips the colors, right? So it flips the foreground, the background. If I press X again, it flips it back. So DX, and I press G, that's the gradient tool, which is right here. And if it doesn't get you the gradient tool, it'll get you the paint bucket tool. And you can go to this drop down menu and switch to the gradient tool. And then you can just drag and it fills your layer back up with white. That's how I'm clearing it off really fast. So I'm pressing it really quickly. I press DXG, and then I just clear my canvas. I press my button on my Wacom pen, and I press D one more time, and it switches back to black. And that's Command Z for undo. Or you could press the hotkey I've set, which is my step back button. Okay, so in terms of just getting started on painting, that's kind of what you need to know to start, and really the rest is kind of practicing. But let's go back to what I was talking about with the brush customization. So we want it to kind of fade with the pressure, so it feels more like a pencil, right? So the mode that you want to go to is the transfer mode. You're going to click this, and you notice when I click it, it automatically activates. And then right here it says opacity jitter, but then there's a control button, a control panel that says pin pressure. So by default, if you activate transfer, it sets your opacity to the pin pressure. And you'll notice that my thumbnail has also changed. So if I unactivate transfer, the amount of pigment or pixels that are being placed with this brush is at 100%. And if I activate transfer, you see that it fades. And if I go to the canvas and play around with it, you'll see that now I'm getting these like gray tones. And then every time it overlaps, it's getting a little darker, a little darker, and a little darker. So think of it like a marker on a piece of paper. And if I press really hard, it's 100% black. If it functions kind of like a marker or a pencil. This is what you need to know to start drawing. Like this is really all you need to know. And then you can press DXG, drag the white across, and then you cleared your canvas, press B, D for black, and you can start drawing whatever you might want, okay? That's all you need to know to practice. From here, it's just like taking a piece of paper out and a pen, and you just start drawing stuff. That's really it. Now, of course, it gets more technical when it comes to like doing real work, or like having a file very editable, but you don't need to worry about that too much if you're just starting out. Because you could switch between black and white by pressing X. So I can sit here and go, like I'm drawing a mouth, press X, and I switch to white, and I could kind of cut in here and fix the shape of it. Press X, switch back to black, press X, switch back to white, and you sit here and you just like go back and forth, and you fix your drawing and your doodling, like kind of like your pencil and your eraser. And this is what you need to like, just get your practice in. And basically, if you could just practice with these default brushes, you're gonna get pretty good at painting, digitally painting and drawing with the digital pad pretty quickly. In terms of what you need to know, this is all you need to know, right? You don't want to be worried about custom settings and custom brushes right now, because if you don't know how to draw, it's not going to help you. If you know how to draw and you want to like start making things a little easier for yourself, there are some brushes that'll add maybe more textures to your images, so it'll kind of save time, but otherwise it doesn't really help your final image, because the fundamental knowledge of like drawing and painting is gonna be what'll help you most. Okay, so you get the idea that like you just switch between this, you press D and you can start drawing, you press D again, you just keep it in black and white for now. Like learning color and learning how to paint with color is it's something that you need to master before you'll master worry about that after you worry about black and white, because you're muddying up the process too fast otherwise. So let's do that again. DXG, I just clear the canvas, B for the brush, D to make it black. And now if you want, you can activate new layers by clicking down here, and basically this little layer menu is going to tell you how many layers you have. So I can add like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, like there's 7 layers here, right? They're all empty, so there's nothing there. But the power of the layer works like so. If I paint on layer 7, then I go to like layer 3, I press really hard and I paint here. And then I could go up here to this little arrow on this menu to the top left. You got this arrow key here. You can drag this layer 3, and you want to affect layer 7. So already you're going to see that it's kind of like tracing paper, tracing, or like drawing on cellophane or something. So that's kind of the power of these layers. It kind of lets you edit something up or down, and I can move them. I can take layer 3, I can hold down with my pen, drag up to the top, let go, and now layer 3 is on top of layer 7. It's hard to tell because it's black, right? If I put red in here, like this magenta color, you'll be able to see it better. So if I drag layer 3 under layer 7, you'll see that the gray is on top of the magenta. If I drag it back on top, the magenta is on top of the gray. And you can press delete, and it'll delete your entire layer. So if you accidentally press delete while you're working, your whole layer will be deleted. So you got to press Command Z. And if you do something like this, if you press delete and your layer's gone, and you accidentally like hit your tablet and you try and do undo, Command Z, it's gonna keep you stuck in that loop I was talking about. So you're gonna go to Window, History, and you can see this little history windows popped up, and you'll see it has this whole list of stuff. It says brush tool, brush tool, brush tool, new layer, new layer, new layer, brush tool, brush tool, brush tool, move. This is everything I've done in the last few minutes. So you'll see that my brush tool is here, and there's delete layer, and there's layer order. So I can click on delete layer. You'll see my layer is still deleted. So if I go one more up, oh, there goes my layer. It's back. That's why I don't use undo, because undo is going to keep you stuck between these steps. So if I press undo Command Z right now, you'll see that it brings back the brush tool. I do it again, it's going to jump back up, back down, back up. But if I press step back, it's going to go incrementally up this list of actions that I've done, and slowly take my document back to where it started. Right, here's that face I did earlier. So you can adjust the settings and how many steps in history you want in the Photoshop preferences. And then there's this thing, I think it's under performance, or it might be under scratch discs. And you don't need to worry about that right now, because if you're just starting out Photoshop, those are some more advanced things that you can customize later once you start learning how to really paint and draw. So you'll see that all the layers I made are gone now because I stepped backward in history. These other settings here on the brush, like you can activate scattering, and you can see what that looks like. Right now, scattering is set to 0%, and the control is set to off. So if I wanted to turn up scattering, you'll see that it creates this like dot effect. It's basically taking the brush shape I have, which in this case it's a soft, fuzzy circle, and it's causing it to kind of just randomly scatter about, right? And it says count. Count says 1. If I up the count, it basically clutters the stroke. So now it's almost like this weird cloud. and I could turn the count back down to 0, or sorry, back to 1. It's kind of like the brush shapes are going to be more spaced out. And I want to undo all that. I just do a step back, step back, step back, step back, step back, step back, which it is Option Command Z. That's the hotkeys are if you want to use it without having to save it to the Wacom tablet. Scattering scatters it basically, and you can adjust the count, and you can adjust the jittering of the count, which is basically the randomization of the amount of brush shapes that are being scattered. If you turn off scattering, we'll just not worry about that for now. You can turn on texture, and then you can see this drop-down menu will allow you to add different textures within the brushstroke itself. So let's take this like square-looking texture. If I paint with a square-looking texture and make the size really big, it's hard to see it almost, but I'll go ahead and zoom in. There's a navigation window that I normally have up to the top right. If you go to Window, scroll down to Navigator, the window will pop up here. And if you look in the menu button basically looks like a little a steering wheel for like a boat. So if I take this and zoom in, you'll see that pattern, that texture that we just selected, that square texture. I can zoom in a little more, you can see it a little better. It's been placed within this brush, right? So if I zoom out, you won't see it as much, but within this texture panel, I can make that size of those squares a lot bigger. So if I wanted it to really be obvious, I can make those squares like 300%. So now if I paint with it, you'll see that the texture is a lot bigger. And I can press D to make it black, and you'll really see like how big that texture has become by adjusting it here. And you can make it like 1,000%, which is like, this basically is huge, weird texture, right? Dual brush combines the attributes of two separate brushes. We'll talk more about that later. I'll do a different stream. We'll talk about that. Color dynamics affects the random color within the brush itself. So if I have, let me go ahead and clear the canvas real quick. If I have my brush set to blue right here, and this color swatch is set to blue, and I press B to activate the brush, my color dynamics, so here's my blue. It looks just normal, like a normal patch of blue there. And then if I activate the hue jitter, you know that from all these other brush settings, the word jitter means randomization. So hue randomization, let's turn it up to 16%. Now you're going to notice that there's some purples and there's these like cyans kind of popping in and out of my brush stroke. And I can activate saturation jitter, and you're going to notice now that the blue gets darker and lighter, along with the hue jitter that's there. So the reason the blue looks darker and lighter is because blue as a color, it's not actually getting darker or lighter. It's just that the saturation is getting brighter. And sometimes when the saturation gets brighter and the hue jumps to that cyan color, it looks like kind of like a neon blue, and it makes you think that the blue is getting brighter, but that's not actually happening. It's just the saturation. Now that's a whole color theory talk we can get into. I'm not going to go into that right now. If I do want to actually activate the brightness jitter, I could activate that too. And now you're going to notice like the blue kind of gets this dull kind of look to it. So let me just I'll just do a separate brush stroke with each, and I'll select a different brush. If I right click the canvas while I have the brush tool selected, it'll make this drop down menu. So if you control click for if you have a Mac, I'm going to select this one brush that's just kind of like super basic, this one right here. So I'm going to select the blue again, and I'm going to paint with, so you notice that I select a new brush, all my settings have changed. So in order for me to get the color dynamics back, I'm going to re-click that color dynamics window. It's got all the same settings from the last time I edited the window, right? So if I paint with the blue, you're going to see all the different steps that are going on within that that stroke, right? So basically, the hue jitter is causing a random color change to happen. The saturation jitter is causing the boldness of the color to go up and down, and the brightness jitter is literally making it darker and lighter as I go. So I can turn off some of these. Let's just mess with the brightness jitter and do the stroke again. Now you're going to notice it's the same blue, but it's just various states of light and dark. If I turn that off and I switch the saturation jitter up to like 100, like almost, let's do 100%, see what that looks like. Now it's the same blue, but it's being desaturated, which means the color is being taken out of it. So it's varying from blue to gray to white. And it doesn't go black because it's not darkening, it's just saturating. And if I turn the saturation all the way down, we'll turn the hue jitter all the way up. Now it's just rainbow, right? So it's 100% randomization of color. That's what you're telling it. Hue is color. Saturation is the intensity of the color. And brightness is literally how dark and how light. So if we do hue jitter all the way to 100%, it's going to basically make a rainbow brush. And there's just completely random colors. No matter what color it is. So I can go and choose red now, and it's not going to change how random that color stroke looks. But as I start turning it back down to like 50%, you're going to see that my brush stroke looks a lot more warm. If I took the hue jitter down to 18%, it's going to look a lot more like that red that I chose. If we go all the way down to like 7%, it's almost entirely red, but you're going to notice if you zoom in, let me actually just make the brush bigger. There's various levels of orange and pink going on within that brush stroke. Let's clear the canvas. So that's basically what you need to know. Like I said, you're probably going to want to stick with a basic brush. Press D for black, activate transfer, activate brush dynamics, brush shape dynamics, and you're gonna see. So if I activate the brush shape dynamics, you'll notice that the control says off. Go to control right here in this little menu, drop it down to pin pressure, and then you're gonna see how it's activated all of a sudden. It's gonna make that tapering effect you want. Brush transfer, control, pin pressure. Now I draw with pencils, so like having the transfer mode on pin pressure and the shape dynamics on pin pressure makes it feel more like I'm drawing with a pencil. That's why I like that setting. Some people that come from the world of like actual like oil painting, they don't like this because oil paints don't behave this way. You can play with those settings on your own, but that's basically the setup you need to know for now to just get you started and how to just start drawing and painting. And the rest we can talk about later. But anyway, I'm going to get offline now. I just want to do a quick talk about how to get started. And you can watch this again on the Twitch replay, and I'm going to upload it to YouTube. And then anyone else is watching this, thank you for watching if you're watching it. There'll be some more videos like this. But this is the basic intro that's going to get you kind of painting and drawing as fast as possible. And I'm going to kind of minimize, like, as we go through the videos, we'll go ahead and go a little more complicated. And we can kind of stop the videos with a series of like actual like drawing instruction, which the drawing instruction videos I won't focus on how to use Photoshop, and we'll focus just on drawing. But anyway, thanks for joining me. Thanks, Cthulhu Hoopster. I will talk to you later, and I'm gonna get offline, guys. All right, thanks.